Well, hello everyone. I'm Jeremy Johnson here again at RBCL Podcast, and I'm again with our pastor Charlie Hall. How are you doing, Charlie?
Doing well. How are
Great.
you?
Doing well, yeah.
Good.
We have a couple of questions for you specifically in marriage counseling. Really just want to ask at the start, what are some specific issues you see with both women and men in marriage?
Well, that's a pretty broad question. It's difficult to narrow it down, but the way I would narrow it down is I would use Paul's instruction from Ephesians and say the specific thing is husbands need to love their wives and wives need to respect their husbands. Now, what does that mean? The advice, the counsel I would give to husbands, and not just to young husbands, to all husbands, is, brother, you have got to learn to love your wife when she is unlovable. That means when she is angry at you. That means when she is spitting insults at you. That means all the time. You love her because you made a promise before God to love this woman, not because she's lovable. And I know from counseling married couples that too many men either don't get that or forget it.
Yeah.
And I understand it's easy to forget in the heat of battle. For me too. Now, I am not immune to this, but I see too many men that seemingly willfully forget that they made a commitment before God to love this woman for better or worse, and to love her because they have decided to fix their love upon her, not because she drew their love out of them.
Right.
Now, hopefully, in a good marriage, that happens. But if it doesn't happen, that's not an excuse for a husband not to show love to his wife. And that is, it's so vital, and it leads to so many conflicts when a husband becomes selfish, self-focused, and therefore a wife becomes self-focused. And they come in to talk to me, and they're both pointing at the other one saying they're not doing what's right. And I always encourage them to point at themselves and not to talk about the other. Tell me what you can do differently in this situation. So I would say that to husbands. I would say, learn to love your wife like Paul instructs you to. It's a pretty high bar to love your wife as Christ loves the church.
And with the many issues you see in marriage, this is the punch that you would give for men. This is the main thing.
This is literally the punch I would give to men, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very easy for me to be verbally aggressive with a man and say, get your act together, buddy.
Yeah.
You need to I want you to understand something, and grab him by the face mask, as it were, and tell him, this is how you need to be.
Yeah.
It's very much harder for me to grab a woman by the face mask.
Right.
Now, so I've talked to wives, and I've talked to wives in these sorts of conflicts with their husbands. And I've said to them, the thing I would say to a wife, and I'd say it in a much more gentle and roundabout way possibly, is you got to realize you are your husband's main supporter. In your husband's mind, I'll use the word approval of him, is one of the most vital approvals in his entire life. He lives, in a sense, humanly, for your approval. Wives have this wonderful superpower to be able to make their husbands be able to, as it were, go through a wall or jump over a wall by just encouraging them and saying positive things to them. And too many wives gripe at their husbands, about how they have failed here or failed there. And there's nothing that hits a man harder than being told he has failed, because men need success. Success in the broadest sense of the word, in all realms. men need success, and wives have a special ability, special insight, and special access to their husbands to promote that kind of success by encouraging it rather than discouraging it. And too many wives discourage their husbands, and it doesn't give their husbands an excuse not to love their wives, but it makes it harder. And that's what I would say to each one of them, if I could. And honestly, I would like to record this and play it back for husbands and wives, so I don't even have to be there. They can just listen to it.
All right. Yeah. This is I'm sure just watching this will be a good reminder for anybody married.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Charlie. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Is there anything else you'd want to say with this topic?
I mean, there's lots more I could say, but I think that I'm going to leave it at that and just encapsulate it in those two things. Husbands, love your wives when they're not lovable. Wives, respect, build up, encourage your husbands when you see them struggling, rather than discouraging them because you see them struggling.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you, Charlie.
You're welcome.